All right, you guys, welcome to the Win the Morning module, part of the daily routine series. And what we're going to be doing first is tackling the morning. The day starts in the morning. It is so important that we start the day off with a win. And I want to start with a quote today specifically. So, this quote is from Benjamin Franklin: "Early to bed, early to rise makes a man healthy, wealthy, and wise." And I chose this quote specifically because there is so much that we've lost touch with these days. We've lost touch with a lot of the things that are really foundational. Getting outside, taking time for ourselves. In this fast-paced, technology-driven world, we need to acknowledge the fact that this has been a thing for a long time. Winning the morning, this is nothing new. And it's just so important that we kind of get back to these ways. The saying, early bird gets the worm. These things have been things for a very, very long time. So I want to start off with this just to kind of articulate the point that this isn't something new per se, but this is key. And next, I want to talk about starting the day off with a win, right? So the greatest advantage that we can give ourselves is to get a win as early as we can. Now, as early as we can, dependent on your schedule. I want to make sure that I cover this. There's also so much stigma around waking up at 3 or 4 a.m., but I understand that everyone's schedule is different. Everyone's responsibilities are different. So this is really going to be based around whenever the morning is for you, right? And again, the most important thing that we can do is set ourselves up to get a win. So what I'm actually going to challenge you guys to do as part of this, action step in the daily routine series as we build that routine is going to be to place a water bottle next to your bed. Now, there's a lot of meaning behind this specific request and action that we're going to be doing. But again, our goal here is to start the day off with that win. We'll talk about later in this module, creating positive feedback loops. But again, using that example of a water bottle, how many of us already do that? And, we wake up, our body's craving water for some reason, which we'll get into later as well. And that water bottle, might as well be on the other side of the world, right? It might as well be a million miles away because we're so comfortable in bed. The last thing that we want to do is, take that sip of water, or more specifically, have to get out from under the covers, take that sip of water, even though it's good for us, right? That's kind of the first challenge that a lot of us face in the day. So I'm going to challenge you guys to have that water bottle there, wake up, take a sip, start that positive feedback loop. So let's kind of get into the next key point here specifically. So morning hydration, again, kind of to go back to why this is such a good kind of win to set ourselves up for in the morning is when we sleep, we actually do get dehydrated. Moisture in our nose and mouth gradually evaporates at night, whether we mouth breathe, nose breathe, obviously, one of those two methods is what we're doing, if not a combination of both. Fun fact, mouth breathing is actually a bit more dehydrating as well, which is why there's so much kind of stigma around, biohacking, things like the mouth tape and that type of stuff. But just wanted to share that with you guys. There actually is a reason that we do wake up extremely thirsty. And one of the biggest reasons is just we get dehydrated in our sleep. And this quote here is from Andrew Huberman, a top neuroscientist right now. I highly recommend checking out the majority of his content. If this is a topic that obviously interests you, or you're looking to dive deeper into, or just learn more about kind of just being an ideal, optimal human in general. But so this quote right here, again, just kind of ties to what we've been talking about, but dehydration negatively impacts physical performance, alertness, and cognitive focus, and thereby can cause brain fog. So to ensure proper hydration, aim to consume 8 ounces of fluid per hour for the first 10 hours of your day. And I want to make a note that this isn't this isn't something that you have to do every single hour. This is an average recommendation, right? So it's not like you set a timer, okay, an hour, 8 ounces, hour 2, 8 ounces. The way that this is recommended to do, or practically done the majority of the time, which is totally cool, is in kind of large spouts, small spouts, right? So let's say that you work out in the morning. It's much more realistic that the majority of that fluid intake is going to be in the morning versus if you work out in the evening, just because, again, you'll be training, you'll be thirstier, or maybe, you just have a meal and you like to, consume a large amount of liquid with that meal specifically, and then maybe you don't eat for a couple hours. That's totally okay. Just want to share this with you guys so you know the importance of hydration, how to hydrate, and also just, what happens if we don't hydrate. So now that we've talked a little bit about kind of the practical aspect of hydrating, we're going to break this down more from a psychological standpoint. So this is a quote by Jordan Peterson. He's a psychologist and author. Highly, highly recommend checking out all of his content if you are really looking to dive deep into, goal setting, just philosophy in general. But moving on, now that we're kind of on the psychological side of things, we need to break down this goal, right? The goal is to win the morning. It's so easy to say that, but we all know what that's like. No one jumps out of bed, jumps, to the kitchen, makes a really healthy meal, jumps in the car, and it's that easy. No. So this kind of gives us some direction on how we actually need to break these things down. So he says you need a goal, but you don't want your distance from the goal to be so big it crushes you. You have to set a goal, then break the goal down into parts. So as you work towards it, you have a fairly high likelihood of actually doing it, right? So kind of breaking this big goal down into smaller pieces, which again is why that first win that we get, starting off taking that sip of water, so important that we set ourselves up for this small victory at first, because it will compound in the future. And this really articulates kind of what we're doing here specifically with the first small win, creating feedback loops. So there are positive feedback loops and negative feedback loops. So what a positive feedback loop will look like is we wake up, we take that sip of water, we feel a little bit more energized, or maybe we just feel in alignment with the fact that we did something good for ourselves, right? So we have the energy to reach over, turn the light on, which leads to us getting up. We go to the bathroom. If you have a check-in, do the check-in, step on the scale, take the progress photos. Maybe if we're training in the morning, then we have to eat. We eat our pre-workout meal. Even if you're not training in the morning, it'll be ideal to eat something. And even if you're not going to the gym, stretch, get some movement in, again, even if you're not necessarily able to make it to the gym. And that just leads to winning the afternoon, winning the evening. That's that positive feedback loop that we're looking to create here. But so often, so many of us, have these negative feedback loops, these tough starts to the morning that just obviously don't set us up for success throughout the rest of our day. And often what that looks like is this. So, we wake up, we kind of ignore our conscience, right? We all know that we should get up. We all know that we shouldn't just lay there for, however long, kind of ignoring ourselves, ignoring that voice in our head that says, get up. You've been, setting the goal of winning the morning. You've been setting the goal of doing X, Y, and Z because you know that you have that time. You know that you shouldn't just wake up and consume content on your phone right away. So we all do these things, myself included, but being conscious of the fact that these are choices that we have, right? And it starts with that small win, right? So we kind of lay there fighting ourselves. I've laid there for 30, 45 minutes just trying to give myself every excuse in the book for why I should go back to bed, why that's totally okay, and justifying that in my head. But we finally decide to get up. Maybe that leads to scrolling a little bit more on the phone, whether that's in the bathroom or, you make it from a bed to a couch or a chair, and that just leads to starting the day off anxious. We kind of start the day off in a way where we're already going against our conscience, already doing things that we know we shouldn't be doing, which is going to lead to you're just rushing through the morning, not eating breakfast. You're going to have super low energy all day, and obviously this just doesn't set us up for success. So that is the differences between a positive and a negative feedback loop here. Now, I really want to encourage you guys to get some morning movement in. Even again, just thinking from a practical standpoint, you wake up super stiff, you've been laying still for a while, and obviously the older we get, the more we feel this. I absolutely understand that for sure at this point in my life. So this morning movement, super duper important, and it's the best way to start your day. Again, even if you can't make it to the gym, just doing some light stretching, just something, a small walk, it could be really anything. Specifically, you could sit on the floor, stretch your hamstrings out, so many different things that you could do here. That's better than nothing, but you're just going to feel so much more awake and alert than everyone else. And this kind of reminds me of a story as well. So I generally would train in the morning at a gym, and I met this guy. You know how you meet people in the gym, what's up leads to how was your weekend, you kind of just make friends like that and showing up the same place. But long story short, this guy started telling me that he was a school teacher, and his just kind of secret was always getting that workout in the morning, because he would have the energy after the gym or from the gym, to go into a classroom setting. All the kids were half asleep. He just could deal with, all the shit that came up the rest of his day, because he started off with such a huge win and such a boost of energy. So this is definitely a skill or just an advantage that I want you guys to take advantage of if you have the opportunity to. And next, we're going to talk a little bit about kind of training your brain, right? So obviously there's so much emphasis on fitness as well, but it's super important that we also take care of, kind of our mental education, our mental just progression as well. So here we're going to go over a massive habit that is very, very, very popular within the personal development space. So let's kind of set the stage here. So ideally after your workout, again, whenever that is, if this isn't in the morning, just pretend that this is the afternoon or the evening, or just whenever it is that you train is when you should put this habit directly after. So the action step is going to be to consume a self-improvement related book, podcast, or YouTube video on the car ride home. So this is a perfect time to consume educational content, if just in general, not if, no if, just in general, for anybody. I stand by that. So the endorphins will be flowing from your workout already, and you'll be primed to learn. There are actually many studies that show positive benefits and positive correlation between people's ability to learn and retain new information if they worked out before that learning session. And even just thinking about it, if you've gotten that opportunity to train in the morning before, and then you go and kind of tackle something that may be a little bit difficult or new to you, it just feels so much easier. So the action step here is on the car ride home from the gym. This could be the walk, the car ride, bike ride, whatever home. Let's not get super hung up on that. I want you to make the habit of consuming a self-improvement related book, podcast, YouTube video, whatever it might be. And again, this comes from a book called Atomic Habits by James Clear, one of the most influential books within the personal development space. And really the goal here is to tie a desired outcome into something that you already do every day. And the formula for that looks like this. So after current habit, I will new habit. And once you master this, you can create larger stacks by chaining together smaller habits. So for me, or for example's sake here, after I go to the gym, which is something that we already do, I will listen to an audiobook on the ride home. The desired habit, the habit that we're looking to implement here, just creating those similarities and routines and patterns within our brain. It's like, okay, I'm getting in the car, turn on the book, drive home, right? And for me at first as well, this habit seemed super small. I heard about this, I read the book, and it was like, okay, I want to read more. This is, a goal that I find so many people have, and so many more people should have as well. But this small habit stack allowed me to finish over 20 books in the past year. And keeping in mind, my car at home is only 10 minutes, but that's over 60 hours of reading, within that past year. And it absolutely has been enough to change my life. I can guarantee you, if you start reading consistently about personal development related topics, just your level of knowledge is just going to be unrecognizable. So, kind of in conclusion, how to win the morning specifically, we want to start with that smallest win possible. That could be getting the sip of water. That could be, just not silencing our alarm. So many things here. But again, the action step, let's set ourselves up for the win at nighttime. Get that water bottle next to your bed and create that positive feedback loop. Wake up, take a sip. Then we have to get up, turn the light on, and just keep going. We want to fuel up. We want to move, right? The movement, so important to start the morning off with some movement. Again, let's not get hung up on if you work out in the afternoon, the evening, great. We can do a light stretch. We can take a little bit of a walk, anything like that, even if it's just pacing around your kitchen, right? Something like that. Just get the blood flowing, get those kind of first cracks of the day out, so to speak. And we'll be using this momentum to win the day. That's the whole goal here. Start off with a win, and I'll see you guys in the next module. We're going to talk about the second half of the day, how we're going to win the second half of the day. And, guys, I just want to say thank you for your time.